Millionaire's daughter had never spoken until he caught the nanny and his daughter singing. Ethan Caldwell stood frozen at the doorway of the private learning room in his mansion. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Soft piano notes drifted from the small fingers of Luna, his 6-year-old daughter, whom he hadn't heard utter a single word in over 2 years. But what shattered him wasn't just the melody. It was the clear, angelic voice singing in flawless French. The voice belonged to Luna, the child diagnosed by top specialists as selectively mute and possibly developmentally delayed. Seated beside her at the piano was Maya Thompson, the 28-year-old educational therapist and music tutor he had hired 2 months ago, only because every elite center in the Bay Area had turned down Luna's case as too complex. Maya smiled softly as Luna reached the chorus. Her expression was calm, as if this were just another ordinary afternoon. But to Ethan, the moment felt like a bomb had exploded in his reality. "What the hell is going on here?" he roared, his voice echoing through the high-ceilinged room. Luna flinched, her hand stopping mid-note on the keys, her wide blue eyes filling with fear. She immediately went silent. Maya rose from the bench, still composed. "Mr. Caldwell, I can explain," Maya said, her voice steady, unafraid. "Explain?" Ethan stepped further into the room, fury in his eyes. "Explain how a child who hasn't spoken in 2 years suddenly sings? The best doctors at Stanford and UCLA told me she can't communicate normally. And now you, some tutor with no medical credentials, managed to fix her in 2 months?" Maya didn't back down. She instinctively placed a protective hand on Luna's shoulder. "I didn't fix her, sir," she said calmly. "I just listened." Ethan scoffed. "Listened? The girl doesn't speak. What exactly did you listen to?" "You're wrong. Luna has always had a voice. She just chooses who to share it with." Maya looked Ethan in the eye. Her tone was gentle, but firm. "She talks to me every day, tells stories, sings, asks questions most adults wouldn't think to ask. She's learning 3 languages, plays piano and violin, and composes her own music." "Nonsense!" Ethan barked. "This is some kind of manipulation. You've tricked her, done something." Then came the moment no one expected. Luna stepped out from behind Maya, her gaze fixed on her father. Her voice rang out, clear, steady, mature beyond her years. "Daddy, I talk. I just don't talk to people who don't want to listen to me." The silence that followed was absolute. Ethan stood still as stone, his face pale, eyes locked on the daughter he had long considered a medical failure. Maya smiled, not in triumph, but with the quiet awe of someone who had just witnessed a miracle. "That's impossible," Ethan whispered, stumbling backward. "The doctors, the tests, everything." Luna stood her ground. Her eyes held a calmness far beyond her age. "Maya asks how I feel," she said. "You only ask the doctors. What's wrong with her?" Those words, simple, innocent, and sharp as a blade, cut into Ethan with a truth he had refused to see for years. He didn't know it then, but in that very moment, his carefully constructed world had begun to fall apart. Ethan turned his head away, trying to mask the confusion written all over his face. He couldn't make sense of what had just happened. His daughter, the same child he had taken to a dozen clinics, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on therapies, had just spoken. Not stammered, spoken clearly, as if nothing had ever been wrong. "This is a trick," he muttered, glaring at Maya. "You've planted something in her head." "Nothing but respect and belief," Maya replied, her eyes unwavering. "I didn't come here to fix Luna. I came to see her, for who she is, something you've never done." "Enough!" Ethan shouted, louder than before. "You're overstepping. This is my child. You're a tutor, a hired help. You don't get to question how I parent." "No, I don't," Maya nodded. "But Luna does, and she's telling you now, but you're still not listening." Luna clutched Maya's hand. She didn't tremble or hide. She just looked at her father with eyes far too sad for a 6-year-old. "You're always busy," Luna said softly. "Even when I'm right here, you don't see me." Ethan froze. That sentence, where did it come from? A 6-year-old wasn't supposed to understand that, but Luna did, and that terrified him more than anything. He turned to Maya, his voice strained but still clinging to control. "You're corrupting her." "No," Maya said, her tone sharpening. "I'm saving her from being treated like a failed experiment by her own father." "Who do you think you are, talking to me like this?" Ethan stepped forward, his face flushed with fury. "I'm the first person who talks to your daughter like she's a human being," Maya replied. Her answer hit harder than any physical blow. Ethan took a step back. In that sunlit room for the first time, he felt small, not because of status or power, but because he was being undone by a truth he refused to see. "You know nothing about us," he said, voice shaking. "I've done everything for Luna, the best doctors, the best private schools, the most advanced therapies." "And when did you ask her what she wanted?" Maya asked. That question lingered in the air like a live wire. Ethan didn't answer. He looked at Luna for the first time, really looked, and saw not a case to manage, but a child desperate for connection. "I don't need doctors," Luna said, her voice cracking. "I need you." Silence fell once again. Ethan turned away, trying to maintain composure, but his fists clenched. In his mind, everything was unraveling. Diagnoses, professional advice, his image of himself as a competent father, torn apart by a 6-year-old and a tutor with no medical license. "Get out of my house," he said through gritted teeth. "Now!" "Dad!" Luna stepped back, her voice shaking. "Don't make Maya go." "Out, before I call security," Ethan repeated, still refusing to look at either of them. Maya knelt down, hugging Luna's trembling frame. "I'm okay, Luna. I promise I won't let anyone forget who you are." Luna sobbed, clinging to her like life itself. Ethan turned away, unable to face what he had just done. He didn't know it yet, but that decision would spark a chain reaction he could no longer control. Maya stood still in the oak-lined hallway where the late afternoon sunlight spilled through towering glass windows, casting a golden hue over the plush carpets. She listened as Luna's footsteps grew faint, led away by the housekeeper at Ethan's command. Her heart ached as the child's soft sobs faded behind a locked door. She had known this would happen, but knowing was one thing, witnessing it was another. Maya had worked in enough wealthy homes to understand that in their world, people were assets, even their own children. 2 months ago, when Maya accepted this job, her friends called it a mistake. A mute child, a cold tech CEO, a mansion dripping in money but devoid of warmth. But Maya hadn't taken the job for the salary. She took it for Luna. From the first day she met the girl, Maya sensed something was wrong, not developmental delay, but disconnection. Luna wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, didn't respond to her name, but her fingers tapped in perfect sync to a Chopin piece playing on Maya's phone. A mute child couldn't analyze complex rhythm like that, unless she wasn't truly mute. In the days that followed, Maya didn't try to make Luna talk. She simply showed up, sat beside her, played music, read fairy tales. She built a space where Luna could just exist, free of judgment, pressure, or the label of broken. Luna began to draw. Her first drawings were all gray and black, but then colors crept in. One day, Maya left her phone recording in her pocket while they played piano. That was the first time she heard Luna humming, softly in Italian. No prompting, no coaxing, just music and trust. Maya kept every piece of evidence, not to accuse anyone, but to protect Luna. Because in this world, no one believes a 6-year-old girl unless you have paperwork, degrees, and audio files to prove she's not defective. Ethan never asked his daughter what she liked. He only cared about diagnoses, treatments, specialist programs. He saw Luna as a failed investment to be corrected before she embarrassed him at Silicon Valley galas. To him, Maya was just the hired help who played piano. He never asked where she studied, where she came from, or why she understood Luna so well. The truth? Maya held a master's degree in special education from UC Berkeley, spoke 3 languages, and was once a foster child, raised in a system where no one truly listened. She knew what it felt like to have adults decide everything for you. She knew the kind of silence that wasn't born from inability, but from futility, from knowing no one cared what you had to say. Ethan couldn't see that, but Luna did. Luna looked at Maya as the first person who heard her, and Maya knew. If she stayed silent now, if she walked away and did nothing, she wouldn't just betray Luna, she'd betray herself. She tightened her grip on her purse. Inside, a small voice recorder, with hours of conversations, music, and Luna's quiet laughter. A collection of evidence that whispered the undeniable truth. This child didn't need fixing. She needed love. And Maya would not let anyone, not even a prejudiced father like Ethan Caldwell, bury that truth ever again. Ethan entered his home office like a man preparing for a crisis meeting. Every inch of his posture, his gait, his tight jaw, the fury in his eyes, spoke of one thing: pain transmuted into anger. He couldn't control his emotions, so he turned to the one thing he could control: punishing someone else. Maya stood in the center of the room, still and composed, her purse resting by her feet. She said nothing. She knew any defense now would only fan the flames of the storm Ethan was building inside himself. "You have 15 minutes to get out of my house," Ethan said, his voice cold as steel. "If not, I'll call security." "Mr. Caldwell," Maya replied calmly. "Before I go, I ask one thing. See your daughter, not as a problem to be fixed, but as a child who needs to be loved." Ethan clenched his fists. "I don't need parenting advice from a babysitter who's barely 30. "You're right, I don't have children." Maya nodded, eyes steady. "But I've spent my life listening to kids who've been hurt by adults who thought they were doing the right thing." A knock interrupted the tension. Carmen, the longtime housekeeper, entered, holding Luna, who was crying uncontrollably and resisting with all her strength. "No, you can't make Maya leave," Luna screamed, her voice hoarse from sobbing. Maya knelt and opened her arms. Luna rushed into them like they were the last safe place in the world. "I talked," Luna sobbed. "I talked, and you still don't hear me." Ethan didn't look at them. He kept his back turned, his lips tight, his gaze averted, as if refusing to see could somehow make the truth disappear. "Take her to her room," he ordered, his voice flat and emotionless. "Lock the door." Carmen hesitated. "Sir, I think—" "Now!" Ethan barked, cutting her off. Luna clung to Maya's dress, her fingers gripping the fabric like it was all that tethered her to safety. Her eyes pleaded with Maya in a way she'd never forget. "You are not a problem," Maya whispered into Luna's ear. "You are a gift this world isn't ready for. But I see you, and I will not stay silent." Ethan turned, finally meeting Maya's eyes for the first time since the confrontation began. "You've just lost your job. Don't make this worse." Maya rose, her eyes glowing, not with anger, but with conviction. "I'm not making it worse, Mr. Caldwell. You are, by refusing to face the truth." She stepped out of the room, leaving behind Luna in the arms of a housekeeper, quietly crying, and Ethan, once the man who controlled everything, now left with nothing but the hollow space he had carved around himself. Maya knew this wasn't the end, It was just the beginning. And this time, she wouldn't walk away quietly. 3 days after Maya left the Caldwell estate, the mansion fell into a different kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind the wealthy enjoy, but a hollow, unsettling stillness. Ethan believed the problem had been solved. He quickly hired a new caregiver from San Francisco's most elite agency, Elena Ruiz, 62, a Spanish-American specialist with nearly 40 years of experience working with neurodivergent children. Discreet, composed, impeccably qualified, everything Ethan thought he needed. But Elena was not easily fooled. She sensed something was wrong from the very first day. Luna wouldn't eat. She wouldn't speak. She refused to leave her room. Her drawings had become chaotic spirals, drained of all color. When gently asked questions, she simply shook her head or buried her face in pillows. "Elena, this is normal," Ethan said when she updated him. "She acts out. She'll adjust." Elena said nothing, but in her heart she knew this wasn't a tantrum. This was trauma. Meanwhile, across town, Maya sat in the small apartment she shared with 2 graduate school roommates. On the table in front of her lay folders, hard drives, audio files, drawings, and secret videos from her tutoring sessions. Everything meticulously organized. Luna's first spoken sentence, her first melody, her first emotional expression through art. Maya was no longer the dismissed nanny. She was now the keeper of a story far greater than one household. A story about silent children, unchecked privilege, and the insidious ways power can rewrite truth. Jordan Hale, a civil rights attorney, sat across from her. He flipped through the files, listening to the recordings with earbuds in. "This is unbelievable," Jordan muttered. "You realize this could form the basis of a national case?" "I don't want money," Maya replied. "I want Luna to be seen. I want Ethan Caldwell to look his daughter in the eye and finally see what he's ignored for years." Jordan nodded, eyes serious. "Then we're not just filing a lawsuit, we're going public." Back at the Caldwell mansion, Elna sat beside Luna in silence. She knew better than to force words. Gently, she handed the girl a napkin and a marker. "You don't have to say anything," Elena whispered, "but if you want to write something, I'll read it." After several still minutes, Luna picked up the marker and wrote, "Is Maya coming back?" Elena swallowed hard, not because Luna spoke, but because she still had hope. Across town, Maya looked down at Luna's first drawing, a slightly open door with light peeking through. At the bottom, Luna had written, "I don't need someone to open the door. I just need someone not to lock it." Maya knew this fight was no longer personal. It was time for the truth to speak. The following week unfolded like a quiet storm. At the Caldwell mansion, Luna had all but disappeared from daily life. She refused to speak, refused to leave her room, and began making strange, repetitive sounds when stressed, a classic response in children processing emotional trauma. Elena Ruiz, who had witnessed hundreds of such cases in her career, no longer had any doubts. This wasn't a regression. This was a cry for help. Each day she made detailed notes, not for Ethan, but for herself, for evidence. Meanwhile, across town in a modest office at Stanford University, Maya sat beside Dr. Aisha Morales, renowned child psychologist and Maya's thesis advisor. On the screen, clips of Luna played one after another, recordings of her voice, her artwork, her musical improvisations, and pages of psychological observations Maya had documented over the past 2 months. Aisha went still as Luna's voice rang through the speakers, clear, pure, and emotionally articulate. "My God," she breathed, "this isn't just a bright child. This is a gifted child buried under layers of prejudice and neglect." Maya nodded. "I call it Project Luna. I can't let them silence her again." Jordan Hale, standing in the doorway holding a coffee mug, tilted his head and smiled. Project Luna. Sounds like a movement. It is, Aisha added, and we're not just protecting one child. We're setting a precedent for the thousands of others labeled as difficult, unreachable, when all they really need is to be seen and heard. The three sat down together. They mapped out an action plan: legal filings, academic framing, media exposure, and a public press conference to be held at Stanford's Children's Rights Center. "I'll handle the media," Jordan said. "You'll have full control of your narrative, Maya, and Luna's." Maya nodded, gripping the USB drive that held everything. "This time," she whispered, "no one gets to look away." Back at the Caldwell estate, Elena sat beside Luna on a dark Saturday evening. The child hadn't turned on the lights. She hadn't spoken. But as Elena settled beside her, Luna handed her a folded scrap of paper. "Do you believe me?" The words trembled on the page like a heart about to give up. Elena placed a hand gently on Luna's head. "I believe you, and someone else does too. They're coming back." For the first time in days, Luna's eyes showed a flicker of light. In Maya's apartment, the final pages of Project Luna rolled off an old printer. The first page bore a bold title: Project Luna, Resurrecting a Silenced Child. Maya stared at it, resolve hardening in her chest. She was no longer the fired nanny. She was now the voice for every child still learning how to speak. 1 week later, Ethan Caldwell woke up to a flood of notifications on his phone. An email from California Child Welfare Services. Urgent in-home welfare assessment requested for the Caldwell household. A missed call from his personal attorney, a short but chilling text from Jordan Hale. Press conference, 3:00 p.m., Stanford Children's Rights Center. You'll want to be there. Ethan threw the phone onto the bed and rushed to get dressed. No one would destroy his image, not a former nanny, not anyone, but deep inside, he knew. Things were slipping beyond his control. At Stanford's Children's Rights Center, the conference hall was packed with reporters, educators, advocates, and students. On stage sat three figures: Dr. Aisha Morales, attorney Jordan Hale, and Maya Thompson, the woman who had once been dismissed as just the help. Ethan entered under a storm of camera flashes, his face unreadable. "We are here today," Dr. Morales began, "to present a case study of how familial bias can suppress the extraordinary potential of a child." The screen lit up. An audio clip played. Luna's voice, crystal clear, singing a full operatic piece in Italian. The room held its breath. Then a recording of Luna speaking to Maya. "Dad always tells the doctors I don't understand anything. I'm right there, but he talks like I'm not. Yesterday he called me a non-returnable investment on the phone." Ethan's face drained of color. He remembered that call. He thought he had been alone. He was wrong. "Doctor," Morales continued, "we have over 17 hours of recordings demonstrating Luna's advanced language skills, emotional insight, and awareness of how adults perceive her." Drawings, music sheets, and poems appeared on screen. The audience began whispering. Ethan's composure faltered. "The worst part," Jordan added, "is the series of emails between Mr. Caldwell and his private doctors, where he requests they maintain a diagnosis of developmental disorder for the sake of special school accommodations. Direct quote, "Don't need her to improve, just need paperwork that looks clean for the board." Ethan stood abruptly. "This is a personal attack. These recordings were illegal." Jordan remained calm. California law allows educational recordings when neglect or emotional abuse is suspected. Silence thickened. Maya stepped forward, holding a thick binder. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice even, "in 2 months your daughter told me how she pretended to be more limited, because that was the only way to get your attention. A 6-year-old should never have to fake incompetence just to be loved." A video began playing, Luna talking to Elena Ruiz about philosophy, and advanced mathematics. "What hurts most," Luna said, "is that Daddy never really looked at me. He looked at his fear and called it me." Ethan collapsed into his chair, speechless. Dr. Morales placed a folder before him. "Child Services is recommending monitored shared custody. Luna will remain with you, but under mandatory psychological counseling. For you." The room went still. "And," she continued, "Luna has been officially accepted into Stanford's Gifted Youth Program. Ms. Maya Thompson will oversee her academic and emotional development." Ethan looked up, eyes reddening. Does Luna know about all of this?" Maya smiled gently. "Yes, she helped plan it. She told me, 'Daddy's not bad. He just forgot how to look at me with love.'" No more words were needed. The press conference ended in thunderous applause. And for the first time in Ethan's life, he had nothing to say, except that he had to start over with his daughter. In the days following the Stanford press conference, Ethan replayed every word, every image, every sound from that stage in his mind. The applause had faded, but the echo of Luna's voice and the truths it carried lingered. 1 week later, his mansion no longer felt like a fortress of power. It felt hollow. Not because it lacked people, but because, for the first time, Ethan had to confront the silence within himself. Luna still lived at home under the new supervised care model mandated by Child Services. Each morning, a licensed counselor visited to work with both father and daughter. But what unsettled Ethan the most wasn't the professional oversight. It was the quiet distance in Luna's eyes. She didn't hate him. She still greeted him, still sat at the dinner table, still nodded politely when asked questions. But her eyes, calm, far older than her age, held a distance that no amount of money or effort could close. Love wasn't something you could fix, and you couldn't patch over neglect with credentials or gifts. Ethan began reading everything he could find on selective mutism. He listened to every recording Maya had archived. For the first time, he heard his daughter whisper, "Daddy doesn't see me." The words landed like glass shattering inside him. His hands trembled, breath caught in his throat, and for a long moment, he couldn't move. Each playback was a fresh wound, forcing him to face the years he'd spent building walls instead of bridges. The day Maya returned to the Caldwell home, not as a nanny, but as Luna's official academic and emotional development specialist, Ethan waited at the door, no longer in an expensive suit, but a simple shirt and the quiet humility of a man who had been wrong. "Maya," he said as she stepped inside, "I don't know how to start." "Start by listening," Maya replied gently. Over the next few weeks, Maya resumed her work with Luna, playing music, telling stories, asking questions that made Luna shine. But this time, someone else sat silently in the corner. No phone, no laptop, no emails, just Ethan. He began to listen. He didn't interrupt, didn't analyze. He just sat there, letting his daughter's voice reach the parts of him he had spent years shutting off. One afternoon after Maya had left, Ethan knocked on Luna's door. She was composing music, her face focused like a true artist. "May I see?" he asked. Luna didn't answer, but she slid the sheet over to him. He looked down and read the title. "Still Here." Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, Luna, for not seeing you when you were right in front of me." She looked up, really looked at him, for the first time. "You're learning," she whispered. "Yes," Ethan said, smiling through tears. "I'm slow, but I won't quit." 1 month later, Luna stood on a small stage at the Stanford Gifted Youth Program's opening showcase. Maya stood backstage, her hands folded tightly, while Ethan sat in the front row, not as a cold CEO, but as a father with his hand over his heart, watching his daughter perform her very first original composition. The lights dimmed over the piano. Luna sat down, took a deep breath and began to sing, her voice filling the room with the song titled "Still Here." The auditorium went completely silent, and in that moment, Ethan didn't just hear his daughter's voice. He heard love. He heard redemption. He heard a second chance. One autumn night, after Luna was asleep, Ethan invited Maya to the back porch. The night was quiet, lit by the warm glow of the porch light over a wooden table. 2 mugs of tea steamed between them. "There's something I've never told anyone," Ethan began, his eyes fixed on the garden. Maya waited in silence. "When I was a kid, I was labeled different. My father hated it. He wanted me to be normal, forced me into activities I didn't care for. I swore I'd never hurt my child that way, but I did exactly the same." He gave a bitter smile. "I thought I was protecting Luna, but really, I was protecting my own fear." Maya's voice was gentle. "You were wrong, but I understand. We all carry old wounds, and sometimes we place them on the people we love most without realizing it." They were quiet for a moment. Ethan met her eyes, warm, steady, not pitying, but understanding. It had been a long time since someone had seen him like that. From then on, their talks were no longer just about Luna, but about childhoods, failures, dreams left behind, and new hopes. Ethan found himself watching the way Maya's eyes lit up when she spoke, the way her laughter seemed to loosen the knots in his chest. It wasn't sudden. It was a quiet gravity pulling them closer each day. Affection grew naturally, like a seed nurtured by trust. Winter passed. Luna thrived in Stanford's gifted youth program and finished her first composition. In the evenings, she played in the living room while Ethan and Maya sat together, his hand brushing hers, a small gesture, but enough to make her smile. One early spring afternoon, Ethan handed Maya a small envelope. Inside was a photo of the 3 of them on the day of Luna's first performance at Stanford, with his handwritten note, "You didn't just save her. You saved me too." Before she could speak, he pulled a velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a simple, elegant platinum ring. "Maya, I want us to keep writing this story, not just for Luna, but because I want you to be part of this family, forever." Tears glistened in her eyes. "Are you sure? I come with long debates about education and hours of noisy piano practice." He laughed. "I'm sure. With you, even the noise is beautiful." She nodded, smiling. "Then, yes." Their wedding took place on a summer afternoon in the garden behind the house. Friends, family, and colleagues filled the space. Luna was the little bridesmaid in a white dress, holding a bouquet of baby's breath, her eyes shining. When Ethan and Maya exchanged rings, Luna stood between them, holding both their hands. "Now Daddy can't send Maya away anymore," she said, making everyone laugh. The reception was filled with Luna's piano music, the laughter of guests, and warm embraces. Maya looked around and saw every gaze on Luna, no longer pity, but admiration and love. Ethan slipped an arm around Maya's waist, whispering, "I used to think my greatest success was my company, but no, it's this moment." Maya rested her head on his shoulder. She knew the journey hadn't been easy, but now they were a family. As the sun set, Luna ran over, holding a hand-drawn card, the 3 of them under a sky full of stars, with the words, "Home is where someone truly sees you." And they knew that would always be true. Somewhere beyond the garden, the night sky shimmered, and for the first time, all 3 of them were looking at the same stars, dreaming the same dream.